All right, Liars Club, welcome back to Egg, Ammo, and Adventure, where the stories are wild, the guests are gritty, and the coffee's strong enough to strip paint. Today we're joined by Jeff Caldwell, a man who knows his way around strategy, storytelling, and the kind of ag innovation that doesn't just move the needle, it rewires the whole dashboard. Jeff works with Strativation, helping egg brands and businesses think bigger, bolder, and smarter. And when he's not shaping the future of rural marketing, he's cheering on his lovely bride who's got a catering business out of Indianola, Iowa, where the food's so good, it might just qualify as emotional support. As always, Steve Larsen here, meat doctor.
Todd Coffelt, small-town farm kid living in the city. And Jeff, welcome. It's good to have you here.
Thank you, gentlemen. Gritty. I like it. I like gritty.
Do you?
I'll take it, yeah.
I should have had you write the intro. You're much better than I am.
You can't afford me.
Wow.
You got to be careful what skills you develop. You got to be careful. This is fantastic. So the setting, everybody, just to give a little plug, freshly baked ham balls, fresh out of the oven, sitting
covered in barbecue sauce.
This might be the shortest episode ever. And we're going to wash it down with the Simpson Stormin' Red Ale, which is just a gift for everybody. We appreciate the hospitality. And if you went to Simpson, like I did, it's a little extra special.
I don't know how to top that, Jeff. But so welcome, Jeff. You and I have been working on this interview for a few weeks now. Tell us about Jeff Caldwell.
Well, I have been an Iowan. I guess I suppose I'm native at this point. Lived in Iowa about 20 years. Originally from western Kansas. Moved here as part of a job. I was working in the agricultural media. And so worked for a Successful Farming magazine for about 10 years. Got into the agricultural marketing business about 10 years ago. And worked for a few different companies, a lot of ag companies, large and small, a lot of ag technology companies, folks like that. And try to, I still kind of have ties to my family's farm out in western Kansas. So try to kind of keep tabs on what's going on in the agricultural world. But yeah, try to, I try to stay pretty grounded on what's going on at the farm level, which is, I think, pretty important in our business. And, when a lot of companies sort of lose touch of that sometimes. And so that's kind of what we do. We do a lot of work with trade associations, state level and the national level, and a lot of issues right now. It's kind of a chaotic world. And so there are a lot of people kind of looking for ways that they can evolve moving down the road, and so they could stay relevant with farmers and sell to farmers and help farmers kind of advance too. So that's kind of our big goal.
No, that's great. And let's get to the important part of this. You're recently married, right?
Yes.
Less than a year?
A little over a year now.
A little over a year now.
Congrats.
So as Todd and I first told you, we don't do counseling, but we do help with marriages. Do you need any advice from Todd and I? I've been married 26 years. Do you need any advice from Todd and I to help?
She's not glaring at us. So right now in this moment, no. Maybe in 5 minutes. I don't know.
You never know. You got to be ready for surprises.
Yeah, depending on how closely she's listening to us.
There you go.
No, and I got to put a plug in. Whip It Good Catering in Indianola. Emmy has built this thing from the ground up, and we are sitting in her kitchen, which she has almost single-handedly transformed completely herself. And it's pretty awesome. It's a fun business to play a small role in. I come in here and do grunt work for when I can't help out, and I just take orders.
We all have valuable skills that we hope shine when they're needed.
Yes. We do.
Well, and just so you know, AAA has a safe word in case we broach a subject. So anytime you say popcorn, Todd and I will stand down and deviate.
Perfect. We'll go the different direction.
Duly noted.
Well, so if somebody were want to have Whip It Good Catering, how would they get a hold of the business?
whipitgood515.com is the web address, and she's really super active on social media, TikTok, Facebook. She's like social media whiz. She's had some stuff go viral, and it's pretty awesome. And she specializes in events, weddings, stuff like that, but then also, smaller events. And they are developing a knack for charcuterie stuff, and they're like artists. It's crazy. Like when they build a charcuterie board for 150 people, and then the best part is when they wind up with a Ziploc bag of random cheese after they do on, like, there's nothing better than like the leftover bag of random cheese after she builds a charcuterie.
Your skills, do they focus in grunt work, as you identified? Is it more on the cleanup end, or are you in here during preparation? Because I can imagine a piece of artwork with a couple pieces of cheese missing would not be good.
Yes, it is. That's hard. Yeah. I mean, because, that's a challenge. So I'm typically the cleanup guy. That's more my strong suit.
Well, just the fragrance of the handballs is making my mouth water right now. But did you get an invite, Todd, to eat cheese or anything?
Oh, that was weird. I mean, it was a great segue. We could have ate, but no, we're not going to. Too fast. That's awesome. So Steve and I have faces for radio, and as we sit here and start,
and voices for print.
Oh my gosh, that's Daddy saying bass. Holy buckets. But so when you mentioned you were in media with Successful Farming, were you in articles, sales, presentations?
I was a writer.
Voiceovers, maybe?
No, I never did that. No, I'm terrible at that. I used to be a fill-in host for, this is skewing kind of old, but I used to fill in on the big show on WHO for when Mark Pearson would be out on vacation or something like that, when Ken Root was the host. And so
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah, and I recall getting some advice from Ken that it probably wouldn't pass his censors on what to do, and more importantly, what not to do, and specifically what not to say. But that was my only experience in radio.
Did he say never to go on a podcast with two guys from Southern Iowa?
That was actually that was totally it. South of 92. Yeah, he was like, stay away from those guys south of 92. But I wrote articles. I ran the website for a few years and got to do a lot. It was kind of cool because I kind of came at a time when it was like the ag media and Steve, and I know it, we had crossed paths, we had done stuff, and as they were kind of the lions of the business, and that business has changed a lot. It's sort of just like farms right now. We've seen all this intergenerational transfer, and the generations are, the younger generations coming on. I came at a time when that older generation was starting to retire, and like I had these mentors, these guys that had been in the business for, like, when I walked in the door, that staff had 280 some years of combined collective experience, and that has gone, that was, so walking into that as a 27-year-old, I was just like mortified. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, and I had to act like I did, but it worked out, and it's good. And that business has changed a lot. Companies kind of have taken over a lot of information. People's consumption habits have changed a lot. People don't read magazines like they used to. We're the old guys when it comes to that stuff, and I think, but a lot of companies are adapting to that, and social media and stuff like that is becoming to match those consumption habits. But magazines, farmers still love magazines. They've just kind of changed in their scope.
Understood. Before we jump into the media, I would like to understand. You've been in Iowa almost 20 years.
Yeah.
I want to understand more about Western Kansas.
Because it's flat?
Well, it's flat, but you started out there in agriculture. What kind of agriculture is in Western
Family farm.
So,
right?
What kind of family farm is in Western Kansas?
Our farm was, so my great-grandfather had moved there, immigrated from Germany. And the funny thing is he came from a region of Western Germany where during Napoleonic times, they had planted little scrubby apple trees everywhere. And with the idea that you have apple trees, you have apples, so you could feed people. So during that time, they had that. So, and I've been over there, and they're just these gnarly little scruffy looking trees, and they're everywhere. And so he consequently hated trees. So when he immigrated to the U.S., he settled where he did, between Hoxie and Dresden, Kansas, because he could look in every direction and not see a single tree. And it's changed a little bit since then, but not much. And so we raised, and so then
he hates trees just about as much as I do.
And so he homesteaded out there, farmsteaded, and then by the time I was around, we had dabbled in the purebred Hereford business. My grandfather had, and then by the time I was around, we were brand agnostic, just mama cow herd, and a lot.
How big?
We ran, oh gosh, dang, I think between.
Sorry, I told you there'd be no math today.
I know I'm bad with numbers. I think between 500 and 600 most of the time.
Ooh.
So,
in a cow-calf operation?
yeah, and it was, that was back when the times that business was really, we went through years where you didn't have two nickels to rub together on the cow side. And so we also were involved in the feedlot there.
So northwestern Kansas, I'll use those names. And you talked about Nebraska and water rights, but what you were raising cow-calf, tried to do corn, it had to be irrigated.
Yep.
It's flat.
And it's not as flat. That's the funny thing. The old joke somebody told me years ago, down in the West Texas, you can watch your dog run away for 3 days. But surprisingly, we were close enough to, it's about a 3-hour drive to Denver, and it's from my hometown. And
Really?
so it's higher elevation a little bit. And it does, where our original farmstead was, yeah, you can see for 100 miles in their direction.
I've been through there, haven't stopped there. I've stayed out of trouble. So then you decided you wanted to be in agriculture and successful farming, and you got started with them doing reporting and articles and hands-on, and then you were at the swing of technology. You mentioned that a little bit, and that was starting to happen, but the agriculture there is different than it is here. So there were kind of two evolutions going on at the same time, if you will, or two changes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I started kind of ag tech, this whole ag tech sector as it's now known. I started that, kind of was born, I don't know, what would you say, 2012, 2013, something like that around there.
Started to gain momentum anyway, right?
Yeah. And I kind of started out as a reporter, just reporting on this stuff and kind of the new stuff coming out, and some of this, the investment communities, it started getting attention from investors. And then we sort of saw these venture capitalist groups sort of get attracted to agriculture. Agriculture still kind of has some sizzle among investors and venture capitalists.
So define ag tech for the audience, just so we're all on the same page. It could be electronic, it could be genetic.
Yeah. So, the biggest thing, I think, when people talk about ag tech, they talk about what we know as precision ag. That's kind of the primordial ooze of what we have now. Anything that's data related, anything that's digital, that collects data from the field or some kind of operation, including livestock. I mean, we've got technology there. Anything where I think a data set is created or monitored or collected and then leveraged in a certain way, I think to me that's kind of a big, real basic for that kind of area of ag tech. Somebody told me at the National Swine Registry, for example, they've been essentially using, these guys for show pigs have been essentially using artificial intelligence for 50 years. In these genetics, they've talked about like how they select genetics for show pigs. Yeah, I mean, that business way better than I do. And I mean, that's a huge, huge industry. So the challenge has kind of become, for the longest time, it was like, okay, we've got all these new gadgets and tools and stuff, so we can collect all this data. And so it's like data. And then it's like, all right, now what the hell do we do with it? And so then like 10 years later, it was like, it became data utilization. And now we've kind of come back to, okay, like smart data collection and smart data utilization. And so it's kind of
having the right data almost.
Yeah, like cutting out the chatter and the noise and stuff.
But in my mind, is it going from macro data volume to micro detail?
Yeah.
And data.
Yeah.
And farming that out and taking that out. Oh, nice. Okay. All right. So you've been in Iowa. Different kind of ag world, and maybe even at the heart of it. What was your biggest challenge?
Well, when I lived in Dodge City, Kansas, in Southwest Kansas. So I got the hell out of Dodge, and that joke never got old. Obviously,
it's still good. Still good.
And so we had a rule, and I used to drive around and interview farmers and cattle feeders and stuff, and the Panhandle was my territory for a while, and so we had
exciting.
Oh, man, was it ever? We had a rule. My old first editor, he said, stop at every gas station you get to and get gas, because you don't know if you're going to have enough gas to get to the next one. I had an old Chevy Cheyenne the regular cab, 2-wheel drive pickup, and there's no speed limit, or back then there was no speed limit, daytime speed limit for some of the state and county highways in Texas. So you just drive like bat out of hell. And then so when I moved to Iowa, then the speed limit, it's 55 or 45 on some of these county, roads. And I was like, well, I got to stop and get gas every gas station to get to. And it's like, man, stop at every 10 miles of Casey's. God made for some long trips. So I learned pretty quick that part. But, and it's really not, in a lot of fundamental ways, it's really not altogether different. I think people, the first time my parents came to visit here, my dad bitched and moaned about how much topsoil we have here, because we have 20 feet of topsoil here, and we got like a 1/4 inch of topsoil where I grew up. And so it's very, very different agronomically, obviously, but scale farms, our farm we sold out in 98, and our farm wasn't big enough to support basically 3 families. But acreage wise, if the same number of acres would have been more than enough for that in Iowa. And with I moved here, and I started working here in 2003, moved to Iowa in 2004. And probably about 2005 was when the land market started hockey sticking up, and like at one point I remember going to that annual land values press conference, and the amount to rent an acre of ground here was almost the equivalent of buying it back where my home farm is. And so that was kind of my moment of what the hell, when I moved here, and showed me the difference. The hog industry back then, man, like it was contentious as hell. 2005, 2006. And I mean, I got death threats from people on articles about hog farms, because it was when, the nuisance lawsuits and all that stuff was just like super hot. And so I learned pretty fast. And we had that issue with the cattle business. Back then the cattle business was pretty tenuous then too, but nothing like the hog business when I moved here. And that's fortunately changed. I mean, don't you feel like that's kind of cool?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Well, so 2 questions, follow-ups. Any acreage still housed by the family? Anybody going to take it over? Is there a plan to succession planning or anything like that? Or are you just going to cash rent it out and go from that route?
We are actually in that process right now.
Are you?
Of figuring that out. We have, unfortunately, my dad's a retired ag banker. And so he knows, he's helped people with their own estate plans and stuff. So he's seen the fights, and he's been in the middle of them. And in our own family, we didn't necessarily have a big fight, but it was like we had to plan a lot in pretty short order.
Yep.
And so so consequently, he has a plan. We know exactly the business units, the LLCs, the estate, all that stuff. What we're not sure about is what exactly we will do once the time comes. On one hand, it's easy. It's 500 miles away. So I can, with a couple of phone calls a year, I can manage the place. We have a really good renter. We have great farmers that work with us, and so that's easy. But the water situation is what kind of worries us most, because once either limitations are placed on water use or the aquifer kind of starts coming up dry, what's that going to do to land values? And so that's where we're concerned. And it's like, well, do we sell it while we can, knowing that, my family, we're not going to have a family member who will come back and farm it.
Yep.
Which is not, I think about it, it's like, it kind of sucks, but we weren't really, like the 5, 6 generation, 7 generation farms like around here. We are not like that. We were very business-like about it. And there's, obviously it's my roots, but whatever happens is going to happen. We're going to do the right thing for our kids and our grandkids. And I don't know what exactly that's going to be. If it's going to be, I might keep a 1/4 of ground just so I have an excuse to screw around, BS about fertilizer prices and complain, have something to complain about. But, I don't know. That's a good question though. And, it's what I talk to a lot of people. There's so many people going through that right now.
Yeah.
And like, I talk to people who range from like not knowing what the hell anybody's going to do to like people who have it down from like the day dad drops dead, this is going to happen. And it sets off a chain reaction. They know that much. And it's kind of intimidating hearing those guys that have that figured out so well, because and then I hear stories of such complexity of like 3 daughters who, one of them wants to burn the place to the ground. One of them wants to own the whole thing. And one of them lives at 1,500 miles away. And it's like, it's like, man, it's some of the most complicated family issues are ones involving the succession of a farm that I've heard in my life, because it's all fun and games till you start talking about 5,000 acres of ground, especially now it's worth $20,000 an acre, right? And so, it's staggering sometimes.
It's such a simple question, and you had an answer ready. How long did it take you and the family to come up with that answer? Because it has to be brought up. You have to work through the awkwardness, and you have to say things out loud, which not everybody might be thinking. But how long did it take you to get there?
I recall my grandfather passed away in 2002 or 3. Grandma passed away about 8 years later. And so we had the business unit. We had 2 different business units for the farm when Granddad passed away, but not everything was really accounted for specifically. And then so between the time when Granddad passed away and Grandma did, that's when Dad really worked with the local county attorney and whomever else to really set things up to the point where now. So, that's 7, 8 years between that time. And he just worked on it kind of over time. And, one time he's got an old roll top desk in the basement where he works. And he said, well, here's the folders for this and here's all that. So he's got it all. It's very analog, it's kind of that way. And the one thing that's sort of strange, I tell people this now, and people in the farmland market are like, what the hell? And so the farmstead that my great grandfather settled was in one location. And then we had a separate farmstead where my grandparents lived, my parents lived, my aunt and uncle all lived at different times. And it was about 25 miles from the original place. And we never owned that. We always rented it. The county attorney from the next county over owned it. And it was a handshake deal for 50 some years.
Wow.
And I've told people that, and some people are like, what the hell? But then other people are like, oh yeah, we've done that too. And it's staggering. And I can't even fathom that now, and especially around here. I mean, that kind of like makes me nervous just thinking about it. But it was one of those situations where he was never going to sell it to us. And Granddad just kind of accepted. I think at one point he was like, well, hell with it. He's never going to sell it to us, but he's going to rent it to me every year and it's going to be at a fair price. And so it kind of became, well, we didn't own it. Damn. But, we still ran it and we still treat it like ours. And anymore, with all this talk of the farmland market now and how much is changing and all these acres, 370 million acres that are going to be coming up, and who's going to buy it. And everybody laments the institutional buyer. The Mormon Church is a big buyer ground, Bill Gates, the Gates Foundation, all these places. And that sucks on one hand. And that does contribute to guys like us not being able to buy ground like maybe we could have 25 years ago. But then I think, and I just was thinking this the other day, like, well, does it matter? Does owning, is that something that we need in order to continue our farms? I don't even know. I mean, I've just been thinking about this lately. I mean, if the average Iowa corn and bean farmer owns 5% of his ground, how's that fundamentally going to be different? Obviously from a lending standpoint, stuff like collateral, stuff like that. But am I crazy? Do you see a day in 20 years, like when we're the old farts? I mean, not because obviously we aren't now. But when we are, will it be, what do you think? If we don't own, if 2 institutional investors own half the ground around us, is that going to be a problem?
Well, first of all, yes, you are crazy. I just want to get that out there. And second, we're all about the same age. And I remember growing up, barely remember in the mid to late 80s, early 90s. And, I think we've switched from you have to own everything, to now, if you can cash rent it, maybe that's the way to go. I don't know that there's an answer to your question other than things keep changing.
That would be my thing is change happens. Sometimes it's slow and takes forever. And then sometimes somebody figures it out and it turns out not being a bad idea. And more people try it.
Yeah.
But not all farmers are new. Not all farmers are old. Not all land is owned by the farmer. Not all of it's rented by the farmer. It's people are figuring out how to do that. And there are a lot of examples of that, I'm sure, and how that's going. But finding those acres you can rent and make money on is a challenge. And you kind of alluded to that earlier on. And there's some challenges right now that any good plan has to be written in pencil because it's going to change.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, this fall may rewrite some things, right? Given, I don't know what you guys are hearing, but reaching out to my local network, it seems like yields, bushels per acre are pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And markets are getting fewer and fewer and prices are going down a little bit, right?
Yeah. I talked to a guy today who works in the soybean export world. He works with buyers out of New Orleans native, and like about our age. And so he's been in that business his whole career. And so like, man, he has some crazy stories, and he works with those buyers at the Gulf and from everywhere. And I was, it was for a magazine article. It's like, man, this is pretty depressing right now. And he said, yeah, but this China story, it's like, we're hearing this China story. And he said, it's hard to ignore it, because when you hear that it's October 9th and we haven't sold a bucket of beans to China when we should have sold I don't know.
A lot more. Let's just say a lot more. Yeah.
He said that is psychologically damaging. But he said, we're still selling beans, but it's like, and he said, it's not, nobody's ever going to make up for China, like not ever. But, we're selling food. He's used the example, we're selling food grade beans in the Indonesian market. Egypt is buying. He said Turkey's been coming to the table a lot recently. And he said, those are incremental improvements compared to China. But his take was China can't not buy forever because the quality, he said the amino acid profile of our soybeans is way better than anything from Argentina or Brazil. So at some point, the quality difference and just the sheer volume, like I said, and I've heard this, we're not the low cost producer on the world market for beans anymore. And we may never be that again, barring any crazy change. But, his take was like, we can chug along, and if farmers can get some support, some payments and some support from the government, and then sort of have these sales trickle along, then make it through the next few months, make it into next year when the farm program is actually, we have a farm bill and farm program, but it's just going to be different. And we have to get, like you said, we've got to figure something out. New uses for new domestic uses. We've been hearing the same crap for 25 years, what we're going to do. And I've challenged some people in the soybean business. It's like, hey, we've been talking about this forever. Like, let's really figure something out. And it's hard. I mean, it's like turning a cruise ship, and it's like, it's going to be hard, but we need to. I said, have we gotten lazy with China? It's like, because we don't really work very hard because China's always there and they've always manipulated our markets. I covered the markets long enough to know that. And so it's not like this is something new. They'd issue tenders and then 6 months later, and the bean market would go up 10 cents, and then 6 months later cancel it and the bean market would go down 10 cents. And so it's not like this is new or phenomenon, but I think we've gotten a little lazy having that big of a customer coming back to the table, and maybe we just got to learn how to work a little harder.
That was going to be my question. Do you think this situation will be a catalyst in ways of figuring it out? Necessity is the mother of invention.
I think so.
Or innovation, right? Necessity is the mother of innovation. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think you're absolutely right. We're going to have to, but innovating the right ways. I mean, some of this stuff is like, we have funding mechanisms for, through checkoff programs and stuff like that do support, and we do support a lot of major initiatives to open these markets, and they do a hell of a good job of that. But I think there's a lot like things with domestic uses that we can do a lot better at. And I mean, somebody told me a couple of years ago, he said, he's an old economist from Illinois and he's lived in Oklahoma for 50 years. And he said, you know what they used to do with all that corn in Iowa? And I said, what? He said, feed cattle. And I said, you know what? You're right. And who's to say? I told somebody the other day, I said, if I had 500 acres of Iowa farm ground dropped in my lap right now, I'd rent 400 of it out and I'd put a damn dry lot in and I'd feed calves because I mean, at least for the next year or so, that's the best moneymaker out there. And so I don't know. It's going to take some new thinking.
If you figure out how to get 500 acres dropped in your lap, let me know. Give me a call straight away. I want to know this.
That's the last thing you need is 500 extra acres, Todd.
But I like the plan. I like where we're going with this. I like the plan.
So being an Iowa Stater, I got to ask you where you went to college. How does one get to the college you went to start the career path that you're on?
Well, I've got two pieces of bad news for you, actually.
Uh-oh.
Kansas State University, the other end of Farmageddon. And so, yeah, that's where I went. And my 17-year-old daughter just got admitted to Iowa the other day.
All right.
And so I think
That's good. I got a daughter there too. It pains me to say Iowa, but I'm working on it.
yeah, I already had one friend tell me I need to disown her already because of that. But
We don't do counseling.
oh, that's right. Sorry.
We do advice. But not counseling. So now, what'd you go to Kansas State? So growing up on Western Kansas on a farm, did you want to be a veterinarian, economist? Did you want to be a writer when you went there? What did you want to do?
The funny thing is, I was gonna follow in your footsteps. I went pre-vet.
Yeah.
And I walked and I had done, I loved our vet growing up and I had shadowed a vet before and I was pretty serious about it. And then I walked out of my biology final, my first semester, my freshman year, and walked over to the dean's office, changed my major to English literature. And I remember Christmas break, I didn't tell my parents, my old man was a banker and I can recall him having I think he had his fist almost cocked back when I told him I changed my major to English.
No kidding.
Oh man, it was because I was just like, I didn't know what the hell I want to do.
Yeah.
And then I went into journalism and then I realized, hey, I wanted to, that had been like a dream, not an aspiration. Because I wasn't anywhere near smart enough. I mean, my roommate was in vet school and like he would be having this necropsy lab and stuff. And he'd come back to our house in school and tell me about it. And I'd be like, God, I wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes in that. So, but I was by dumb luck and I wasn't even going to be in agriculture. I was like, I grew up on the farm. I want to get the hell out of here, get away from it. But then by dumb luck, I happened to run into who later became my coworker, my first job at the High Plains Journal when I was a senior, right after the start of my last semester. And so I got a job there and I was like, well, maybe I can work in this business and maybe it isn't so bad. And so, I mean, I was like, I had that kind of like moment where I was like, yeah, give this a shot. And it's been all right.
What was the look on your face when they told you had to move to Dodge City?
I mean, I'm a small town. I was a small town kid. Manhattan, Kansas was a big town for me at that point. And I was like, well, Dodge City, I was still close. I was still within a few hours of Manhattan. So I could still go back to football games and stuff like that. But man, when we, in 2003, when I talked to my publisher at the time and he said that they were going to expand into Iowa, I was like, I had never been to Iowa in my life.
Really?
Yeah, I had never been here. And so then, it came out, it was August of 2003 when I first came to Des Moines and I started working. And so I was about a year, I drove back and forth. I'd come up here for about a week every month, right?
Drove back to Dodge City?
And then go back to Dodge City. I'd interview farmers for a week, go back to Dodge City, write all the articles, plan everything else, come back up. And so, yeah, it was a time, man.
It's a lot of drive time to think and plan, isn't it?
Yeah. And people are like, oh, yeah. And I'm lucky. I've been able to do a lot of super cool stuff in my career, like travel and stuff. But I always say, yeah, my travel, like I go to, glamorous places like, Shercourt in Iowa, or like
Ames, Iowa.
Yeah, and so I've been to a lot of places that not many people have been actually, but it's cool. You know what? Like that early stage of my career when I got to do that and just travel and do all that work by myself was so helpful. Like I had the old guys that were around when I was a young guy that were such good mentors and bosses and stuff. So I was pretty lucky. Yeah.
So switching gears, let's talk about Strativation.
Yeah.
right? What is Strativation and what do you do for Strativation?
So we are research consulting and marketing company. That's kind of the three pillars of what we do. Our founder is a research guy, kind of qualitative, quantitative research, go to market type stuff. And so that's kind of the foundation of what we do. And then the marketing services stuff sort of flows from that. We work with a lot of kind of your standard ag companies, but we also do a lot of work in some pretty innovative sectors, a lot in the sustainability space, technology space, a lot of crop biologicals. That's kind of one of our niches. We also work with some trade groups, like I said, at the state level and at the federal level, sort of with public policy type messaging, communication work. And so, we're a pretty young company, 6 years old, I think, technically. I've been there for about a little over a year. And it's kind of comes at an interesting time in ag, when we do have all this innovation, this pipeline of innovation coming, but then we have this marketplace that's sort of prohibitive of that in some ways. And so we work with, like I said, a range of companies in size and scale too. But I think the biggest thing is identifying the right innovation. I think that's what's going to happen as this market remains tight, and we've seen this over time. For every 10 startups that enter the marketplace, 9 of them fail within the first year. And so, that's a challenge and maintaining, we're a startup too. And so we sort of, we're doing a lot of work with artificial intelligence and things like that, just as a way to kind of stay abreast with what is going to be the next thing, like you asked about, ag tech, what constitutes ag technology. I mean, now, yeah, it ranges from the plants themselves, plant genetics, all the way to now, not even hardware. It's not, it's not even software. It's sort of like virtual. And so we're seeing a lot of solutions looking for problems. That's kind of, but those guys are going to be the ones who go away, I think. And so, it's an interesting time to be in that.
Cool. And so you mentioned you've been in the company 6 years. How old is the company?
Or no, I've been there about a year.
If I miss, excuse me.
Yeah. So, and we're based in Columbus, Ohio. So I have to listen to Ohio State fans all the time. Yes.
Sorry.
And I'm our only guy in Iowa. We got a couple of guys in St. Louis. And so I'm like the Western front. And so, and there's a lot of, I think we kind of underestimate how important our local market is here, the Iowa ag market, even the Des Moines area. It's like, this is an important spot. And we do some work in Illinois and Indiana and Ohio and Iowa's, it's kind of driven home to me that we got a lot going on here and it's some pretty important work. So that's, yeah, I'm kind of out here on the Western edge of humanity.
How many people total? You covered Midwest, sounds good, St. Louis and Ohio.
Yeah, we have 13 of us now. So pretty small, pretty lean, pretty small company. We don't have an office, the physical office, and we do have a couple of places where we work when I go to Ohio, but it's it's totally decentralized, and it's like, that's fine. You could have never imagined that. I mean, when I first moved to Iowa, so from 04 to 06, I was a field editor. So I worked from home then and would go back to Dodge City once a quarter. And so I was kind of used to that remote work before COVID, before everybody else had to get used to it. But yeah, it's interesting being totally decentralized like that. Yeah.
Well, Todd and I were talking on the way down of the ag industry in Iowa. If you look at beef, pork, chicken, turkeys, crop grounds, fertilizer, processing, hunting, when California regulates themselves out of the picture, Iowa will probably be the number one ag state around.
Yeah, it will be. Yeah. I heard something that does, Storm Lake? What county is that?
Buena Vista.
Is that do they have the highest concentration of livestock in the country in Buena Vista County? I heard someone saying that because
I was told Sioux County has more pigs than people.
Yeah.
In Sioux County.
Yeah. Man, that's and Western Canada, we had the feedlot now in my home county it was my granddad was on the original board for the feedlot in the early 60s, and I've seen the original sketches, and they had the max head capacity was going to be 18,000. And I think it was like at 4,000 when they put it in, and it's at 80,000 now.
Oh.
And it's like, it's its own, but the thing that's so funny is like, it's a family that owns it and runs it. I mean, one of the sons is a friend of mine, and they're just they're just like ag people, they're just like everybody else in many, many ways. And it's like, that's a family business. It just happens to be huge. And it's like, just like we talked about with the evolution of farms and like with land rent and stuff, size, and it is kind of a hard pill to swallow. I could see why that's difficult, but.
Well, I just say, when you were earlier talking about you had 500 to 600 cow-calf pairs, right? Just the look on your face and the way you talked about it was nothing. Like it was, we're small where we're at. It's a lot.
Yeah, it's good. And like I said, I've been lucky to go so many places. And like, I talked to a farmer this morning. She's in Delaware, and 1,500 acres in Delaware. And I said, how big are you? Is that big? She's like, no, that's about the middle of the road. But they raise 200 acres of watermelons. They're corn and soybeans and watermelons. And I'm like, that's a lot of, is that just a hell of a lot of work? And she's like, no, we have an H2A crew. I mean, H2A crews go around and do it. And it's such a time sensitive thing, but that's a huge moneymaker for them. And so,
oh, wow.
I didn't ask, you don't ever ask how many acres that somebody farms, and you never ask them how much money they make off stuff. But like, I guess they make probably as much from that than they do anything else.
They wouldn't be doing it if they did.
Right.
So as we wrap up, what is Strativation working on?
Well, right now we do a lot of these, we do a lot of large research studies. We just finished up a research study on the drone market, agricultural drones, which the results of that are coming out. We're working on a couple, hopefully down the road, on the ethanol business. What the state, that's not the most sizzled sex appeal of any topic right now, but what happens if it tanks, and what do we need to do to move it into the next generation? That's one we're looking at. We're working on some new event. We're partners on this FarmCon event in Kansas City in January, and that's sort of a cross section of venture capitalists, investors, startups, established ag companies, kind of legacy companies, farmers themselves, big farmers. And it's sort of it's everybody's in the room to make money, figure out how to make money. And it's sort of like, there's something refreshing about that, because we kind of rip the mask off you, because everybody needs, we're not in a charity organization.
Todd, when I hear that sounds like an excellent place for you and I to walk around for Ag Ammo and Adventure.
Yeah.
Just randomly talking to people. What are you doing here?
They say that the average net worth of the attendees is $6.8 million. I'm like,
so if we show up, somebody's going to be worth 13.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds like I'm going to have to get a bigger belt buckle and a cowboy hat if we go down the farm.
We're on a presentation.
Right.
There you go. Yeah, baby.
So I'm going to ask a question. So you've been here for 20 years.
Yeah.
And
and found his wife.
Yeah.
And found his wife, which the handballs were delicious.
I can't stop eating them.
But so in that time, coming out of the 80s in the state,
yeah,
it was tough for financial reasons, savings and loans, and that part of it. But agriculture is different in the South than it is in the northern part, where there's topsoil and where there's not.
Yeah.
But then all of a sudden, the recreation industry popped up, and land values in southern Iowa,
yes,
with hardly any agriculture, were really low and were great investments. And now they're up in funny money that
yes,
we are, I'll say, a third generation family, that we need to come up with a plan such as what you are identifying. But we farmed 5 acres of corn this year and cash rented out the rest of it, 100. But out of the other 600 acres, there's CRP, there's ditches, there are trees, ponds. It's good for recreation, and it's the most attractive land in that part of the state, even though it is the bottom tier.
yeah.
How you talked about agriculture, but you can't. In my mind, my question is how you balance that recreational component that's developed and that need for agriculture. Because you talked about the towns you've been to. There are ways to make money,
Yes,
agriculturally speaking, But then there's this recreation industry of people who don't farm.
I remember going to that Iowa State farmland values press conference, and this has been quite a few years ago, when that south of the nine districts in Iowa, that southwest corner saw the highest rise in land values. Well, because like you said, it wasn't north central, it wasn't up there where it was already worth 10 grand an acre 15 years ago. And I mean, it was worth maybe $2,000, and going from 2 to 5, that's a hell of an increase. And so I think that's going on. And, I've seen people, and I think we're going to have to start doing this because, like somebody said the other day, when we're talking about our cropping system right now, the billions of dollars that has been invested in this state in corn and beans, and we're damn good at raising both of them, too good. And it's like, we were talking like with people and like, well, what if we go to this crop? And it's like, if we do that, we're going to flood the market with whatever the hell crop it is, because we're so good. We got the dirt for it. We've got the wherewithal with the know-how. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to raise way too much, but way too fast. And so maybe that's part of the problem. That's what I told this guy in New Orleans today. I said, well, why don't we raise less? And he's like, well, yeah, I mean, everybody kind of knows that, and now we're seeing people talk about, somebody told me the other day, their corn averaged 190 this fall. They got done way early. And so, you just say that, it's like, man, 190, but didn't put an ounce of synthetic fertilizer out. So he had zero fertilizer bill. They put out some chicken litter. They put, just some stuff like that. Still made 190. And it's like, if you're making 190, but you don't have a fertilizer bill, that dog hunts. And so, and plus the downstream effect of that is, well, if our state average is 190 instead of 240, that's going to cause, supply and old Keynesian economics kicks in, man. It's like supply demand, like our supply is going to go down. We're still going to be making money because we're not putting down all that fertilizer. But then it's like, okay, well, we've got this whole network of ag retailers and the support system. And so then what? So it's like, and this pains me to no end to think this, we've kind of created this system that's creating the problems that we're facing. And like the resolution of those problems isn't going to be easy. Somebody's going to get hurt. And I think, yeah. And so like land use stuff, I mean, I was talking to somebody the other day and we're talking about crops and I said, what about data centers as a crop? And the person got kind of pissed off because that's a hot button. But it's like, a friend of mine is a contractor that works for a company that installs doors and electronic lock systems. And what did he say? There are 17,000 doors or something like that in the Facebook building up in Altoona. And so you think about that, like, so what's that do? So the money that's going into those and like the revenue that's coming, so like, and is there a way that we can proactively manage our ground for something like that? That demand's not going to go away for those data centers. He said if they worked only on data centers for the next 8 years, that's the demand that they have in front of them right now. And so,
wow. And put that into perspective for the part of central Iowa, why they're here. Can you just give an informational statement on how many there are and why?
Let's see. What do we have? We have we have Altoona, the Facebook in Altoona, and we have the 2 Microsoft ones that are closer to us down here. There's Google over in Omaha has 5 or 6, something like that. And
did something get built in Waukee?
There are plans.
Yeah. And I mean, the Microsoft one here, and people raised holy hell when that was going in. I mean, the bike trail and the roads and stuff, and they kind of went back and forth to change stuff. But it's now that it's in, and their operation, I guess the one down south, they're still working on that one, right? Where's that one?
Yep.
And I guess they're still working on the one here right after the bypass. But, I don't know. I mean, if that employs people and, that land's never going to be planted to corn again, but does it have to be? I mean, that's the most unpopular. I heard people that beat my ass that they heard me say that, but like, we're so good at raising corn and beans, and we're so good at feeding hogs and feeding cattle, like the whole country. We're just really good at this. And so it's almost like we're getting too good, like, I don't know what, I mean, am I crazy? Like,
I understand everything you're saying, but I'm not going to be the person who brings it up at a convention.
Well, right, exactly.
Or at the local coffee shop.
Yeah, it's just yeah. And and a lot of it too, like companies, John Deere, like this whole industry. And that's why, like, you ask somebody in the ethanol business, it's like, well, what happens? Like, I posed this question to a guy last summer, high up in the ethanol business, and I said, it was right after Chevron laid off a bunch of people in Ames, like 60 or 70 people, and I said, what happens if ethanol starts to die? And he immediately went to not the business side, he went to the community side. He went to, well, if a plant closes, you're going to have X number of people who don't have jobs. You're going to have the corn basis is going to tank. And so the schools are going to be affected. The businesses in the next town are going to be affected. All that's going to happen.
Big ripple effect.
Yeah. And like that ripple effect can go on and on and on. And that I just thought it was so strange that an industry leader went there first. And that's pretty telling. And so I know it's on people's minds, but it's like, so what the hell do we do to keep that from happening? That's hard, man.
Well, we're so competitive, right? I mean, whether it's corn, beans, pigs, cattle, chicken, turkeys, if my neighbor's doing this, I want to do 10% better.
Right.
Genetics, fertilizer, gas, whatever I want to do, so I can go to the coffee shop or the Casey store and say, you might have got 220. I got 250.
251.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always said that for years. Like, we are, as an industry in general, good people. There's a lot of altruism. Everybody wants everybody to do pretty well. They want to do just a little bit better than everybody. I mean, and like that, hey, we wouldn't be here if we didn't have,
right.
I mean, that's what makes people successful. But yeah. That's awesome.
Well, yeah, we are. As we wrap up, let's finish by saying, do you have any questions for us? Anything else? How would somebody want to get a hold of Strativation?
Strativationgroup.com, strategy and innovation. That's a combination of our names. So strativationgroup.com, where you can Google us there too. And and we're on all the social platforms and stuff, and you can find us there. And just look for my ugly face occasionally on the
your face for radio, just like Todd, Father, and I.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah.
You have any questions for Todd and I? We asked that from everybody. You have any questions for Todd and I? Well, that's a wrap. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your time.
Well, what do we get? Like, so that ground you've got, what do you think will happen to that? Like recreational stuff. 20 years from like when we are the old fogies and we're walking around our walkers, what's it going to look like?
Yeah, I have 2 brothers and a mom, and
12 opinions.
And 12 opinions, and mom's is right. We're tight family, so that's a good thing. That's a good thing. So we can keep each other honest. We play a game when we're together called "We Don't Stop Until Somebody Cries." So you've got to be careful.
I've seen it, Jeff. I've seen it.
You've got to be careful what kind of idea you're going to share with the group, because it becomes the battlefield. If it's stupid, if it's dumb, if it's going to be expensive, if it's not worth it, it goes through it. It goes through it's going to get washed, rinsed, strung out, wrung out, and everything.
If everybody's quiet, does that mean it's a good idea?
There's like a 4-second pause, and somebody will go, "Are you crying yet?"
I love it.
But so we have those questions because, like you shared, we've seen it go south. And there was my examples, there was a family that the mother, the matriarch was there, 7 kids, one of them had passed, grandkids galore, and they were from Portland to New Jersey. And nobody had anything in common. And a lot of those family members, from what I know, they don't talk to each other anymore. And we don't want that. The 4 of us don't want that. We have families. We get together. We still do chores. We still have family dinners together on holidays. That's good. That's positive. I wish that for everyone. I haven't answered your question, not by accident, because we talk about it, but we haven't had to deal with it.
Right. Yeah.
And in the way the laws are, sometimes you don't have to for as long as possible.
Yeah. That's not the exception. That's the rule, I think.
I think it is, because it's the way it's always been done.
Yeah.
But it's something we talk about when we have to.
Yeah. I mean, I've told people, it's like, well, it's something nobody wants to have that conversation because it's facilitated by somebody dying, and nobody wants to talk about that. And so
Well, then you throw in a little dash of the meat doctor, and I like to stir the pot with the Coffelt, so it makes me giggle when I hang out with them.
Oh man, I love it.
Steve doesn't do things by accident. Todd, should I bring that up? No, Steve. Here we
I ask him after I bring it up. He just shakes his head.
Oh man. Well, and what is this? The one thing, this cattle market, this cattle business, what the hell's gonna happen? What are we gonna do? Like, who's gonna pull the trigger first? Who's gonna lose? I mean,
Woo, boy, that's $1 million question.
No kidding.
like, I mean,
You look at how long it's going to take for the herd to get rebuilt and all the other factors involved into that.
There's insurance. So once something happens, there's insurance that's going to cover producers if they use it.
yeah.
The livestock plan, LM management plan, risk protection, livestock LRP.
Yeah.
But nobody's seeing the end in their headlights because it's going to take 3 years for there to be more. And I won't get into too many theories, but it's
All I know is my grocery bill keeps going up.
Yeah. And I was, I remember when I lived in Dodge City, I'd go to meetings, that was back when NCBA and RCAF, and there were these sides drawn. And we had the Kansas Cattlemen's Association, and that was in the RCAF affiliate group. Bunch of great human beings that just had the hell beat out of it by the market, 2001, 2002.
Yep.
And they were just desperate for something. And they were just desperate and there was a lot, the captive supply issue, the retained ownership stuff, all that stuff. Those were big issues. And it's like, they were just getting the hell beat out of them. And the market was just totally the opposite of where we are now. Now it's odd. Some of those same types of issues keep coming up, but like, it's pretty quiet. And so it's like, I don't know.
Here's what I will tell you. Pork is a heck of a deal right now.
Yeah.
All my pork producers out there, go get a loin, even belly and bacon compared to beef prices. Go get some ground pork.
Yeah.
Taste what pork can do for you, because that's a heck of a deal right now in the meat case.
Yeah. I mean, I've talked to more than one person that are just buying hogs, and who would buy a quarter or split a quarter with somebody, and they're not doing it because one guy told me his own son-in-law, he was going to buy a quarter from his son-in-law, and he said he's not doing it this year because it was going to run him. It's going to be $8 a pound for a quarter, and he was like,
for hogs, for pig,
for beef, beef. So he's like, no, so we're going to kill a hog instead, and he was like, they'll still fill the
freezer.
Yeah. So,
use your imagination, kids.
Right?
no doubt. Yeah. I mean, shit, something's got to happen. It's like,
Well, on that note, so we can increase pork consumption.
yes.
That's a wrap on today's episode with Jeff Caldwell, a strategist, storyteller, and proud Iowa advocate who reminds us that rural innovation isn't just alive, it's cooking, branding, and building momentum from the ground up. Also, big thanks to Jeff for joining us, and hats off to the catering crew here in Indianola, Iowa from Whip It Good Catering. If you're ever hungry for more than just ideas, you know where to go down here in Indianola. This is Ag Ammo Adventure, where the meat's local, the beer's cold, and the guests never play it safe. Thanks, Jeff.
Thanks, Jeff.
Yeah.
Cheers.